you want to fire up. Welcome back to Rotten Rust Garage. This weekend, I'm going to introduce you to Frank for the second time. Frank is a classic example of the old adage that idle hands are the devil's workshop. These hands were idle one Saturday about 5 years ago, so I scrolled through Craigslist. Yeah, I'll show you some pictures of what I brought home that day. Frank is a unretired farm truck from Southern Virginia, out somewhere in the country, and Frank was beat to death and kind of, rode hard, put up wet, left in the stable to kind of die, and a fella was selling it. Wanted a lot of money for it. Don't know why. It was not in good shape, but I was still interested. So I went down and met that fella and talked him down significantly after I pointed out the many flaws Frank had. And that was only the ones I could see. And we're not even talking about body damage and body rust. Frank didn't have an undamaged square inch, because the old farmer that had Frank before this other fella got it, well, he used Frank as an anvil, and I think that guy carried around a hammer all day long. Yeah, Frank had been beaten on, literally and figuratively. So Frank is also a great example of that's good enough. Now, I don't know from where you're sitting, Frank may look like, wow, that's pretty nice, but I'm going to show you around Frank and you'll be like, oh, okay. Clean paint on stuff makes it look better, but it doesn't mean it is better. So let's take a look at Frank today. So I really don't know where to start on the story of Frank, except for probably right here. This is a weird option that they did for a while on these old Dodges. It's the bedside toolbox. This really caught my eye when I was flipping through Craigslist, and I don't know why. It's just, like a fiberglass cubby that ill fits into the side of the bed, and I don't know, it was cool. Obviously you can see I don't have anything in there, but I was like, had to have it. The second thing that really drew me to Frank was this club cab. I think that's just pretty cool. I don't know why, but they're not super duper common anymore, and I just had to have it. So while we're on this side of the truck, I guess I can start to show you some of the hammering that's been done to Frank. And this is after I did a ton of metal work with, the little puller rivets and trying to get some of these dents out and then grinding on it. Some of these I didn't even try. Now you'll notice I got some angle steel on the top. I'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, later, but I had to do something to have a square edge up here. And this is a whole lot stronger. If you're gonna hammer on your bedside as an anvil, I recommend putting some really good, what is that, 3/16 1/4" steel, and doing it that way. A lot easier on the old sheet metal. So if you take a look down Frank, I don't know if you're gonna be able to really catch in the light just how banged up Frank is everywhere. It's hammered on, big crease through the the side box here, some damage here. And some of this is because Frank had all kinds of trim on it. It had the trim up here. You can still see the line where the trim was, and it was banged into. It went right through there, all the way down, just like that 77 I showed you last week. And that stuff had been deleted on some, and then somebody decided to just put some Bondo over, you know, where the pins were. Some of the pins were gone, the little weld-on pins that the plastic clips slide on, and I kind of was left with that. Frank had trim all the way around this light. You can see I still left the holes there, never filled those, never filled any of these. There would have been trim up here, probably a piece of trim down across here, not really certain. This is not the original tailgate, and I'll show you some pictures where this is obviously a different color. So Frank, all this trim, Frank had air conditioning, all kinds of stuff, because Frank was an Adventurer W200 SE when Frank was born. You're probably wondering why I'm calling this Frank. Well, that's pretty much because this truck is truly a Frankenstein. It is made with the parts of many, many, many vehicles to get Frank to this a little bit better condition. So we're going to kind of talk through all that. This is not Frank's original fender. This is not Frank's original door. That is the original key lock for Frank. Frank came with one key. Key still fits in that lock and works, because I had the other door that was also not original that was destroyed. The front fender was crammed into it. You couldn't really open it, and I had to get rid of that door. It also had some rust issues, but this door came out of the junkyard, and thankfully whoever replaced that door the last time had taken the time to put the proper key set in it from the original door. We'll come back to some of that as we go, because I have no idea even where to start with a truck of this scope of project. It was huge. So some of the things you'll notice, I did bedline the bed. Again, you can see that Frank was hammered on. Catch some of that wave in there. Take a look at some of the wheel tubs there. But the nice thing is that mostly the bed was here. Now, the front of it, and I'll have to show you some pictures, front of it was crammed against the cab from just, I don't know, hay bales, steel, whatever the heck they were throwing in here over and over and over that did all this damage. That was crammed up against the cab, and I had to unbend that. If you look close, you'll see some wrinkles in there. Here's the rear bumper that I made. I had a couple pieces of 8-inch I-beam laying around, and well, I wanted to do something with it. That might be 7. Not sure. I inherited this from scrap pile at a place I used to work, and I was like, you know, that'll come in handy someday. Well, that day finally came with Frank, because the original bumpers, well, one was missing, the back one was missing, and the front was pretty damaged. So I made this and put it all on here. But the front one I used, the front bumper I used, before I put this steel on here, I slid some steel into the pockets here, and I unbent this back wall because it was crammed into the back of the cab. While I had the bed off, I did all that with hammers and a bunch of giant C-clamps. So that was fun. Let's see, where are we at over here? So I guess the big thing, Frank's got all new suspension underneath of it. I did all that after I brought it home. Springs were sagged. Frank had a 3-inch body lift on it when I brought the truck home. And I don't mind a body lift. I'd never done one before, but this one was 3 inches. And so the front, you know, chrome bumper that was on it had like this massive gap between the front fascia and the bumper. It just looked silly. So over time, what I did is I pulled all those spacers out and I cut them all in half. I went from a 3-inch to a 1.5 inch, which came back to haunt me later. And I'll have to talk about that when I discuss why the engine and the transmission and the transfer case all came out of Frank. anyway, we'll get to that. When I cut those down, I also realized, wow, there was no support back here for these factory bumps that would actually, or should actually, ride on the frame. And so you can see I fabbed up some pieces and welded them in there to where it actually rides on the frame. That way the bed is supported on these cross members here. And there's a good shot of the back spacer. So I don't mind the 1.5 inches, but when I put these springs on, this is a Rough Country 4.5 inch lift. Came with the shocks and everything, which was pretty cool. I put these back springs on, took the Dana 60, opened it up. It's got 409 gears in it. Cleaned all that up, put the lift back together. I left the blocks in there, the riser blocks. So that was not how Rough Country intended you to do it. They wanted you to take those out, but I did not. I left them in there. So the rear sits a little higher, which you can kind of see. A little more gap, but I think it looked funny down off of those blocks. Anyway, I left them on there. I thought that was better. Here's a good shot of this side. In the sun, you can really kind of catch the damage. And again, this is after we welded all kinds of pins and did all kinds of pulling. That's smashed. There's your actual body line. But what's cool, it's all smashed up, but it's not rotted out. I did have to reattach this corner down here. That's not a big deal, but it's not rotted. That is the crazy thing about this truck, at least on the back half of it. The front half, well, not so much. It was pretty rotten. The rockers have been scagged into everything. There's some of the original red paint where I didn't care enough when I put the green paint on. I just shot it on there. This was really a lazy paint job with rattle cans. But no rot. So there's your seam for the extended cab. Let's see, before we go underneath of it, you can see here I replaced these fender bottoms. Probably got some pictures of that. Welding all this on. The brace behind this was rotted away. This was also crushed up. This door worked fine, but this fender did not, and neither did this inner fender. So this fender came off of a blue 77 out of the junkyard. So did the passenger side fender. But that blue fender was really, really rotted. All the tabs for these bolts were rotted away. In fact, at the junkyard, none of these bolts even came out. It just pulled the fender off once I got the couple bottom ones out. And the top ones, obviously. But yeah, dragged these out. You can actually see a little bit of blue right there. I dragged these out of the junkyard from the blue truck, along with this hood, because Frank's hood had been crushed in at the beak here, and I didn't want to. That would have been like I don't know, 3/4 of an inch thick of Bondo to get this shape back. And this one was in really good shape. So I carried that out of the junkyard along with these fenders, and then a different time for the passenger side door, which came out of, I don't know, a 79er, I don't even know. Carried that out of the junkyard too. These inner fenders came off of my brother's little blue truck, little D100 that was seized up, had no title, and he used it for parts for his truck. But these were perfect inner fenders, so I snagged these from him. This power steering gearbox came out of a 90s, early 90s Dodge, maybe 91, 92, that it was in the junkyard. I was walking through there one day and just looking around, saw that truck and looked under, and somebody had redone all of the steering gearbox, new drag link on it, everything. It had the little, you'll see under here, maybe that truck also had this skyjacker set up on it, that steering damper. Somebody had done a lot of work to that truck and then just chucked it in the junkyard. So I salvaged this out of there, brand new, basically, and I don't think they ever drove with it. And this was, I think, 30 bucks instead of the $300 that Napa wants for one, because the one that was in Frank was just gonzo. It was terrible. Let's see, what next? Oh, okay, here's the front bumper. Again, I fabbed all this up and put it together. Some pressure treated wood in there, and just, some angle steel that I got from my brother's steel shop. And again, that I-beam that I snag on from my old job. And then this Badland winch on it. I fabbed up the bottom here, brackets, to where it was nice and anchored to the frame. I maybe crawl under and show you. I built the brackets to bolt it to the frame. And then, you know, like I said, I got this from my brother. Put this on there. These were like, I don't know, Amazon had a kit. So I welded these up. This was galvanized, not fun to weld to at all. Probably took years off my life breathing all that in, but man, to get the heat penetration on this, to get these welds to hold, and wow, what a task. So I guess where else? This is Frank's original front grill. I undamaged a lot of it. These are not Frank's original lights. This is a 78. These would have been orange. I've got the orange ones upstairs. I pulled these white ones out of the junkyard, and they're in terrible condition, but they're in better condition than what Frank had, the orange ones. And then I think later on I found a set of orange ones again at the junkyard, and I think those are up in the attic. But I inversion painted, what's the word, inverted. So what I did is I taped off the DODGE after getting all the paint off of this, where it was originally Dodge would have been painted, and I just taped all that off real neatly, not really, and sprayed the whole bumper, or I'm sorry, the whole grill with flat black, and then peeled the paint back. I kind of think it's a neat effect. I don't know, you tell me. And the hood, again, it was blue. I'm sure there's evidence of it. Oh, there's some evidence right there. And I ground all the paint off it as much as I could. Not all of it, but 85% of it. And then painted this with a rattle can. Painted the scallops black. Love the bird bath. Still haven't put the windshield wiper arms back on, because I had to put a new windshield in. If you go back and search through my older videos, hey, I'll link it below. I think I put that up on YouTube where I struggled putting this windshield in. A classic example of that's good enough. Let's take a little bit closer look at this windshield. You can see I made a mess of this butyl. It is everywhere. Yeah. But hey, just ain't care. It beats the one that was in here that was fogged all the way up through here. But what a task to put one of these in. Just not even cool. All right, so this door is original. Key works on this lock, and Frank was step inside here. Frank was a silver truck. I think it's probably silver and red, maybe silver and black. I can't remember. I think it was silver and black with a red interior, which we'll get to in a minute. And there you go. There's the old Dodge Plymouth Fargo DeSoto tag. So that is the proper door and everything. It's in decent-ish shape. Had to get the 6x9s, didn't we? And let's see, that this door was okay, salvageable, 100%. But the guy, the old farmer, he wanted a red truck, so he sprayed red all over this truck. I'll put up an image, let you see what it looked like originally. You can see some of the overspray there. I just kind of sanded on it a little bit. You know, very haphazardly. And here we go. One thing is, when I did all these window channel strips, the window came separated from its lock down in there on the metal channel. I got to address that. That means this window's got to come back out, which means this little guy's got to come out. Oh, so painful to take these little vent wing windows out. Hey, look, got the gratuitous stack of change in there. Looks like a quarter, maybe a Susan B. Anthony, and some sort of foreign currency, maybe Canada. I don't know. That keeps it nice and tight. Some high quality stuff that I should have robbed from the junkyard years ago, but failed to. All right, let's move into the interior. As you already saw, firing it up, this is how I got the truck. You know, what can you say? These little tabs are broken everywhere. It's only got 93,000 miles on it. you know, I'm sure it's never been rolled over more than once or twice. The dash is all cracked. What you're seeing, what it looks like is not cracked, is actually just foam, expandable foam all in there. When I had the windshield out, I was like, well, let's throw some expandable foam, see if that works. It didn't. Impossible to form and mold it, especially when this is so flexible. So again, good enough. Shot some black paint on it. And you see I did a really good job of not masking anything, and just kind of paint where paint went. You know, headlight switch, cargo light. Don't know if that works, probably not. I've added a choke, which is going to be the devil. This thing just works me to death. Man, look at that wire. That's high quality stuff. Somebody hacked into that at some point. Maybe I should address that, but probably won't. This seat is not original to Frank, although this seat is in phenomenal condition. It came out of that red rusty rocket that was down at my brother's that I bought, no title, locked up, seized up, rotted out, but the seat was pretty nice in it, so I snagged this out of that truck. Frank's seat was destroyed. It was blue, so it wasn't original to this truck, and that seat ended up going into the 78 step side, and then we put a Mexican blanket over it, so that's kind of cool. Just seat swapping everywhere. There's taped off around the sticker, the door sticker. There's the back. Got some essential stuff in there, like empty plastic bag, some windshield wipers, a fire extinguisher for an old truck like this, because yes, I expect it to burn down someday. Pieces and parts that need to go on there. Hey, there's the, let's see, rear transfer case seal. I do need to do that. I've been putting that off because that thing leaks. You can see I've been in here. I did a lot of body work on the outside over there, and then sprayed all that rust, and that was a mess over there. That whole side was crushed in, and somebody had stick welded parts of it back together where the flanges had come apart and broken. I tried to undo that, but still ended up with an inch of Bondo on the outside. Up here you can see evidence of where I was painting, because when the bed was off, I did all the body work on the back of the cab. You can see here, let me get you a little closer in there. You can see I nipped in a little patch, welded it from the outside, ground it down, sealed it up, and just shot some paint on it. Down into the corners there, bed corners are here on this side. Other side was not so much. I ended up having to fab in some metal over there and then seal it all. I just goobed a ton of sealant on it. But the back floor was decent. This did have the little pup seats in it. They go into these holes down here. They're up in the attic. I don't really see a purpose for them. What I'd really like to do with this truck is find some Ram Charger seats and put those in here. And that way you can step through to get to the back area. But I don't know. Maybe. Those are hard to find though. Floors are here now, but they weren't when I got it. There was a giant hole here. This was all rotted away, so the gas pedal, actually, there was no place for the gas pedal. The gas pedal was also missing. All you had was this lever here that you stepped on. So I acquired a gas pedal out of the junkyard and cut in some sheet metal here, as well as along the tunnel, because this trans tunnel, all the bolts were rotted away. You can still see evidence of rot. I just ground off the rust and hit it with POR15 and moved on. Still some water in here. Rained pretty good last night. That water comes down through this door because I never put the outer seal on it. Splashes down here and then goes into the floor. So what you do when you start having water come into your cab like this, instead of fixing where the water's coming from, you just drill a hole in the floor and let it just drain out. Find the low spot. Pro tip. Some plastic trim. Yep, probably shouldn't mess with that. You can see it was an air-conditioned truck, and I'll go around to the other side real quick and show you some more. There you go, that's broken. This is great stuff. Added this in, obviously. Oil pressure gauge works. Never put that voltmeter into use, but I did hook the temp gauge up. It's a little off cold, but this alternator gauge works, right? So I never messed with that one. Fuel gauge doesn't work. Oil pressure gauge does work. Temp gauge does work. Speedometer does not work. I did have it out of here, and you can maybe see that I super glued a toothpick because the needle was broken off, because, you know, just didn't care. Let's go to the other side. So there you go. Frank is an Adventurer SE Special Edition. I don't know, whatever. Cool, W200. And what I really cared about, the other thing, you know, I mentioned, so the side toolbox, A, and then 2, I cared about the club cab, but 3, I cared about this 4-speed. It was my first 4-speed truck. I guess I bought Frank, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and man, I love it. Now this one's different than the 77 that we showed you in the video last week, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Here's the door. I don't know if you can tell that it came off of a different truck, but you have to just take my word, it did. And it was in pretty good shape, but Frank's not in good shape. So I want you to take a look at the wedges I had to put back in here, the shims, to get this door to actually somewhat match up with the fender on the outside. Those are 1/4 inch thick pieces of steel, and I don't know what happened in Frank's life, but this is all buckled in. So I mean, Frank got creamed. Yeah, terrible. So adjusting like crazy. There's a stack of shims here. You can see those came out of the red truck. Got one shim up here, and I spent probably 10 hours getting this door on and adjusted, and it still sucks. So I did get some new seals in after I did the windshield. Those are super helpful, I guess. I don't know. Here's a good look at that body damage. If you look closely here, you'll see the 1/2 inch thick Bondo cracking. Fully expected that to happen, but I wanted to get this body line back, and there was no way with the amount of damage. This would normally be a seam here from there all the way down to right there, and that seam would have, like, you know, be like kind of like that, where it just have a little bit of seam sealer in it, where there's a flange on the inside, and that's how they pinch welded all that together. But that's just destroyed because somebody hammered on it after it got crushed in. You can see more of the damage here. I left that, didn't care about pulling it. All I did was filled in this gap with a ton of seam sealer, and then I fixed this back corner where it was rusty. Let's take a quick look at the inside of that damage. And I don't know how well the light's going to show, but that flange got just absolutely hammered on terribly, and so there was no saving it. I mean, I guess I could have cut it all out and smoothed it, but just too much work. There's where I fixed the cab corner professionally with a little bit of welding and then a ton of seam sealer. You can see on this side also, unfortunately, the sunlight's not helping me. Yeah, got a little bit of rust here. This is where the bottom of that seat would go. Same thing right there. You can see some light coming through. I could barely get back here. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the inside of Frank. Here's my list of things to do. Bleed the brakes. Yeah, I crossed some of this stuff off. Alignment, LOL. There you go. Dash and gauges, LOL. I guess LOL means I'm not going to do that. Pressure wash under the cab and paint. I need to write LOL on there. Wouldn't mind getting some paint. Ooh, I still need to do. Wouldn't mind getting some paint underneath of it, but I still do need to put the wipers back on. Wiring? Yeah, good luck. Yeah, there's a transfer case seal, windshield, door seals, blah, blah, blah. Missing 1/2 inch bolt from right fender. Probably. That's it. Had an ashtray. Nice one. Look at that. Nice and rusty. Pretty cool. Screw in there. Won't run without it. Boy, that is messed up. Alright. Cool. Let's pop the hood and see what's under there. So I did a little remote hood. If you ever see this truck out in the street and you want to steal it, this is where you release the hood. I don't even know what model of car this came out of, some kind of Japanese thing, but I liked it. It was in the junkyard, so I snagged it up. See if I can get Frank open one-handed. Nope. There we go. All right. Here is my Craigslist rebuilt 360. I'll show some pictures of that. Let's see, the one that was in it had some big issues with the pilot bearing, and we were trying to put a new clutch in it, so I just set that one off to the side. Long story. So I had this one sitting around. This is a 1973 360. The one we pulled out was a 1991 360, maybe a 90. I can't remember. This is a 73. I do remember. This came out of a van, and I bought it from a friend, and you know, heard it running. Had a 2-barrel on it. Obviously, I pulled the heads and everything off of this, and the 2-barrel intake. Let's see. I don't remember if I put a timing chain on this or not. I really can't remember. I probably didn't, which might be some of the problems that I'm having right now. But I did put head gaskets on it, and I'll show you. I'll put up some pictures here of what the cylinder tops look like. It had had a blown head gasket at some point in its life. What was really interesting was the rockers were put in wrong whenever they had repaired the head gaskets from the previous head gaskets being blown. Whoever did that job took these rockers in here are stamped L and R, right? So they took every one of the L's and put it on this side, and every one of the R's and put it on that side. That doesn't work very well. So there were some bent push rods. It was terrible. I never tried to run it like that. Obviously I noticed that, and then I did the proper LR, 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 got it all set up properly, put it back together, stabbed that intake on there, a little Edelbrock. And that's an Edelbrock carburetor, I think like a 550. Yeah, that carburetor is, I rebuilt it years ago, but I think it's time to do it again. I think I got 2 big problems with why Frank is so cranky right now. Carburetor, fuel evaporating. I think the accelerator pump, maybe the diaphragm split, or there's some trash in there. It's not doing that very well. Terrible backfire, which you probably heard, and I really need to go in here and just swap out the timing chain. I don't care too much about this engine. It's not like it to be a good core if you wanted to do some kind of fancy rebuild. I'm not really interested in doing any of that because don't really need it with that. And NP435 behind this, it's just fine. It pulls great, and the engine runs good actually. When it's tuned properly, but that carburetor's kind of preventing that. Stamped some headers in. You can see I had to carve out a little bit of the frame to get these very poorly fitting headers in there. Yeah, a winch wiring on the battery. Hey, that's kind of loose. Yeah, did all of this fenders up here. The core support, whoa boy, that was the biggest problem with this truck, and I'm going to put some pictures up. The whole bottom of it here was rotted away completely. It wasn't like the bolts were through to the frame right here, but they weren't attaching it actually. It was bad. So this core support is a hybrid of the original one at the top, so these round headlights would fit in, and then a 87, 88 core support that had square headlights. And I basically cut the entire bottom off of that newer one that was in pristine condition and mated it up with the original 78 core support, so that everything like the hood latch, the you know, all of the hood latch stuff, everything matched up for just all of the stuff. So this is a later style radiator out of the junkyard. I found a truck that had a brand new radiator in it, then went to the junkyard. This is newer, like 80s, but because I pieced together this, I kept a lot of the 80s stuff, but just basically retained the top section here for the 70s headlights. I don't know, maybe could have done it differently, but it's the way I did it. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it, I think, in the end, because now this truck will live on, because these core supports are the death of a lot of these trucks. It just rots out so bad. So now we'll get to the meat of the matter. This is not 70s stuff. So if you look back through some of my old videos, the very first video I did, getting the corn dog from South Carolina, you'll see a white rusty truck that I bought My brother and I went and grabbed it, had no title. It did run, had a running 360 in it, but all I cared about, I gave him that 360. All I cared about was from these ball joints, which you can see are brand new, out. I wanted the later style bearing setup, much easier to work on, to service, to change a rotor, etc. So I used all of that stuff from that, I think it's an 88 or 89 W250. It's a Dana 44, so not a big deal. But this Dana 44 was original to this truck, right? So this was still in there. It's 409, like I mentioned, for the back. As you can see, I've put in all new brake lines and everything, redid all the brake system. But the steering knuckle out on over here on this side, on both sides, is all later 80s. So that's a huge benefit with being able to service on this. Obviously the old ones, I ditched all that because the inner bearings were bad, the ball joints were bad. But when the inner bearings went out on the old style, the original hubs, it just totally ground away the where the cone would sit. I'm sorry, the cup and the cone. It's all was damaged beyond belief. There was no way without some sort of serious welding and machine work to get it back to operating, you know, capacity. So just found a nice fellow online that said, hey man, on I think it was Ram Charger Central, he's like, hey man, that's not a problem, because I was asking for, you know, any advice, and the guy said just ditch everything from the ball joints out on that 70s crap and put in some later 80s stuff. Obviously I needed 8 lug, that's why I got that W250. The cool thing is this is the solid axle from the center section all the way out. It's no split axle right here, because again, I retained all the axles and everything from the original one. And so it's, the swap is really just that easy. You don't have to use that center axle disconnect crap that comes from the later models, which you wouldn't want in this full-time four-wheel drive anyway. And it, you know, all worked out just beautifully. And this is the original steering bar from the truck, and it mates right up to everything. It was a perfect solution. Here's a good look underneath of the engine. Again, they got the old Craigslist rebuild. While I had it all out and had the heads off and cleaned all that stuff, put it back together, I just shot some paint on it. Look at that header. It lays against the oil pan. That thing is such a terrible fit. But that's, you know, you get what you pay for. I think I paid $159 for them. eBay or something. Terrible fit. I even tried to hammer in the oil pan a little bit, but it was all installed, and I felt like pulling it all back out to do it properly. So I just had it wrapped it, whatever. It's, who cares? Good enough. The sway bar. I think this truck had one, but the end links were rotted out, so I found good end links in the junkyard, pulled those off, and put this on here. So it's kind of decent having a sway bar. It's helpful, but if you were doing like crazy hardcore off-roading, it's probably not going to be your friend for articulation. All right, transmission and transfer case. This here is an NP 4350, which is also called the 445. This is not the NP 435, which is also the 435 is what's in the Turd Ferguson over here. This is not. This is a fully synchroed 4-speed. And I got the inspection cover off because obviously a brand new clutch in there, and I'm missing the dust shield that goes to the front, but I can put the inspection cover back on at least. Anyhow, this 445 fully synchroed does not have a granny gear. Okay, it's geared differently than the 435 transmission. It rides a lot nicer, but again, it's super heavy duty. And but it just doesn't have that granny gear. You can't let this out in first gear and let it walk, whereas that one you can. Maybe in low, but I doubt it. It's not got a granny gear in it. It's a synchroed first gear. Real easy to put it in the first gear. Let's see some more. You can see a little bit under the cab here. Do need to clean that up, get some paint on it. Where's where I patched the floor on this side. Got the old rock slider there, and that's pretty good to protect the NP203. If I can get a shot of that, there you go. There's my leaking rear seal. Awesome. But that golly, man, changing the clutch in this thing was a monster. We dropped the 203 out and had all the skid plate and everything out of here. That's where you can see I got all new hardware because a lot of the old stuff was just wrong. Preserved some of the old hardware, but that thing is, oh my god, it's heavy, and so is that transmission. But getting those out of here, because I'll have to tell you the story about why I thought the clutch was bad, and that has to do with those 3-inch body lift pucks that I showed you earlier. But let me get out from under here and tell you that story. But first, while I'm on here, you can see the sweet custom exhaust I did, all purchased off of Amazon. I got the kit and just kind of lined the pipes up, cut them where I needed to, put in a little X pipe because that's just, I felt like doing that. It seemed like a cool thing to do. And then some thrush mufflers, welded up and just dumping them right before the axle because I didn't feel like running any more line back down the truck. Plastic fuel tank, center carrier bearing due to the extended cab, so you got the little stub shaft there. This drive shaft is kind of thin, but it seems to be doing it. Looks like the rear diff is leaking out of the pinion seal there, but other than that, pretty freaking cool under here. It's really clean. Did a lot of sanding and, you know, wire wheeling and painting. Yeah, not bad. So let me tell you real quick why I ended up pulling the engine and the transmission transfer case out of this truck, because before I had it like running and doing anything, it ran a little bit when I first bought it, but it didn't run great with the 360 I told you about that was in it. Obviously the original 360 long gone. But in the time that it hadn't been running at all, that's when I redid the body lift from 3-inch down to 1.5 inch, just cut them in half, bolted them back on, you know, kind of a real hack job, if you will. What I didn't realize, because I'd never messed with a body lift before, but when you do a body lift on a 4-speed, you have to extend the linkage. So fast forward to, I don't know, maybe a year later, when I finally got around to firing this thing back up, did some work, got it fired up, and oh no, the clutch doesn't work. Oh boy, I thought the clutch worked when I first bought it. And I just, like, man, I was losing my mind. Let the clutch all the way out, didn't matter. Nothing was happening. Did not occur to me that that linkage had been modified. All I really needed to do was just either put a new standard linkage on it, or just really crazy adjust the one that was on it. I could have just put something new on there. You can buy those little kits online all day long for these transmissions. I didn't know that. So out came the engine and the transmission, dropped the transfer case first, pulled the engine and transmission together, separated them. Lo and behold, it had a relatively new clutch in it already. Mind blown. And I'd already bought a new flywheel and a new clutch and everything. It was all here and had been sitting for a couple weeks, and I was like, well, I'm not going to return any of this stuff. I'll just go ahead and swap out the clutch with the new one. But that's when I realized, hey, somebody's added in, you know, 2 inches of rod to that linkage from the, what do you call it, the torque shaft, the Z-bar, whatever you want to call it. Man, what an idiot. If I just saved myself a ton of work. But in separating that, that's when we realized that the engine that was in Frank was missing the pilot bushing in the back of the crank. And so it was also really like cobbed up, like not, like you couldn't just stick a new one in there. It, like something had gone on back there. Don't know how or what. Probably had to do with when they put the transmission in Frank. Don't know how they lined it up with that pilot bearing bushing missing. No idea. So instead of fixing that, I just chucked that engine off to the side because it also had some broken exhaust manifold studs on it. I didn't feel like dealing with any of that. I had the other 73 sitting there. It was already on the engine stand and I'd already pulled it apart. Looked at the pistons, show you a picture of those. Those looked like the surface of the moon from when the head gasket blew. I guess a bunch of moisture got in the pistons and incompressible, detonation, expanding into steam. Either that or somebody dropped ball bearings down every single piston. Probably was from the head gasket blowing, getting all that water in there. But I just slapped it back together, threw some head gaskets on it, cleaned it up, did all that number, put it back in, got the new clutch flywheel on, everything, had a perfectly good pilot bearing in it. So just left that and slapped it all back together, wrestled it into the truck, new gasket for the transfer case back to the transmission, had to cut that out of a piece of just plain gasket material because couldn't find it online anywhere or any kit, and just kind of cleaned everything up while it was out of the truck, and then obviously went down the road with the headers and having to notch the frame and all that crap. It just fought me every single step of the way. Everything about this truck has been just been a story of, wow, that was way harder than it needed to be. Some of it yours truly created the hardship, but some of it also was just me learning. I had no idea about the 70s bearings and everything. I'm really glad I learned all that stuff. Swapping in the later model stuff really was a blessing. Really worked out well. All new ball joints. The parts are much easier to source. The bearings, all that stuff, readily available. I'm pretty strong, so I'm not too worried about any of that. But yeah, again, idle hands are the devil's workshop. Well, my hands went unidle for many years. I guess I bought Frank 5-6 years ago, and you know, I've put a little bit of money into it with the lift kit, but it's been kind of nickel and dime. It hasn't been like, the lift kit was the most expensive thing. Didn't pay much for the 360, the 73 360. You know, engine, gasket kit, just a lot of stuff from the junkyard. $50 for each fender. Then I had to bring them home and cut them all apart and weld them together with the original fenders on Frank to cobble together. You can see why this truck is called Frankenstein. Just, you know, stitched together from all kinds of bodies out of the graveyard, if you will. And it's very fitting. And I also, as soon as I got the truck, I wanted to paint it green, kind of a tip of the hat to like the old Army, Navy trucks, whatever, the military style looking vehicle, and I wanted to have like a zombie apocalypse kind of looking truck. I've achieved that, I think, although there's probably still a lot more I could do. It's a lot of fun just messing around with it, but now I gotta get that carburetor off of there and get a rebuild kit on the way, figure that out, and then I gotta mess with the timing. This is terrible. I should have changed that timing chain. I don't know why I didn't when I had that engine up on the stand. It'd be a lot harder now. But dang, you know, hindsight 2050. All right, well, I guess I better get started wrenching. Okay, well, folks, I was just messing around in here and looking and, you know, looking for vacuum leaks, and I think I found one, a giant one. When Frank backfired at some point, the plug that I had on this main port, vacuum port, at the back of this Edelbrock, well, I guess it blew off of there or whatever. That's probably why Frank's not happy today. So this time I'm going to clamp it, if I can see back there. And that would be the main vacuum port that you would probably, most people would run to their to the vacuum needed for your brake booster. Let's see if I can get this tightened down on there. But that's probably why Frank's not happy this morning. Vacuum, man. You can't have a leak that big. That's a 1/4 inch hose, 3/8. But yeah, this Edelbrock intake, what is it, a Performer? Okay, whatever. It has a provision on the back with vacuum, obviously below the blades, for the brake booster. So we'll go with that. Let's see what that does for Frank and cantankerous Frank. I bet you it's gonna run a little bit better. Frank is much happier now without a massive vacuum leak. Man, it's a simple thing sometimes, folks. So I'm lazy. I'm not going to pull that carburetor off today. I'll bet that vacuum plug came off when it backfired last weekend when we were driving her around, or maybe this morning, hard to say. It did not want to start this morning. I cranked and cranked and cranked, and well, she's definitely running better. Look at the leap to get into this thing. But I gotta really hang on, get up here. Good thing I'm 6 foot plus. You wanna roll your window down, bud?
Yeah. This one goes all the way down.
We need to get like electrical tape on our stack of quarters so that it's easier to pull it in and out and not like have a handful of loose change.
I love that on the 77 where it doesn't have the locking one.
And that's a better design, way better, where it clips into the frame. Oil pressure's coming down now that it's getting warm. Temperature's at 180. I don't care about that oil pressure though. With this old engine, man, I'm lucky that it got to the 60 when it does. So
it goes to 60?
Oh yeah, when you first fire it up, she's cold. But look, the factory one is working. So I was looking through my pictures this morning, and when I had the transmission out, I saw it, new process, 4350. And that correlates to an NP 445, which means that this does not have a granny gear like the 77. So you can't like just let this clutch out first. There's some of that backfiring still. You can't just let the clutch out in first gear and let her walk. Dang, that wind is going today, huh?
So,
all right, there's a second gear start. That ain't too bad.
They can do it for sure,
yeah.
but like that.
There's Spencer. What's up, brother? It's definitely better. I probably should get the steering wheel off by 90 degrees. Yeah. All right, there's 4. It shifts so much smoother than that 435.
445?
This is a 445. The 77 is a 435.
Okay. So you were right.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that 435 doesn't feel very synchro.
It's not for first gear.
Yeah.
But even getting into second sometimes
feels not very.
It's not very good. But they're both workhorse transmissions.
Oh,
they're both extremely tough. New process is no joke.
Yeah.
I don't want to run out of gas in the middle of the neighborhood, but we probably will.
I guess new process turned into new venture.
Yeah, I think something like that at some point.
Because in the 97 you could get the NV 4500, which is a 5-speed manual transmission.
Yeah, the NV.
And then a little bit later, 98 and a half to 2002, you could get the NV 5600 6-speed manual.
This truck's what I like to call a little rattly. I did look in the glove box and saw the rearview mirror still in there. That's cool. Yeah, I'll have to put that on one of these years. I don't know, I got a pretty full calendar for 2025, maybe early 2026 I'll get to it. Yeah, those body bushings
are annoying.
That's gotta stop. We're gonna honk down on them when we get back to the house. It's crazy though, what a crap job I did to this engine. I just wanted something to stick in the truck, and I did such a crappy job with it. And I'm gonna go around you, bro. And yet it runs pretty good. I only got 35, 40 PSI of oil. All right, now the mailman's chasing me. She's running 195 degrees, 190 degrees.
Yeah, I was about to ask what the temperature was looking like.
She's up to temp. I'm thinking, I think we just call it good. I really want to take the steering wheel off and straighten it. Basically, it needs to come 90 degrees to the right. Let's go to third. Hey, oh, dash is put together. How cool would that be? I'm attacking this thing.
Yeah, that goes to 11,000 RPMs.
That's it. Oh yeah, that's not necessary. We top out around 6 on this, and you're probably gonna pop something. Oh well. Good old truck. From the farm to the road, man.
Yeah.
Just when you thought she was gonna be left out to pasture and dead. that's Frank. When I was driving it earlier, as you saw, figured out all I gotta do is go about 90 degrees to the right. It's real easy in these four-wheel drive trucks. Just pull it off as a shaft if the wheels are straight and put it where you want her. Throw it back on there. Oh, hey, that's probably why the horn doesn't work, but we can pull all this off of here. There's probably corrosion inside of there where it's just not making metal to metal contact. Probably don't have a very good ground or connection there. What size are you? You're a little guy. I might have to get out the steering wheel puller though. That's a gonna be a 13/16 maybe. Yep. Might be able to get it off without a puller. Let's see. Nope, I'm gonna have to get my puller. Be back in a minute. Let's see if these are the right size. Maybe. Yeah. Lucky. I don't think they're the right thread. Let me see if that's gonna go down in there some. I don't want to gack these threads. Yeah, that's not the right thread. Different bolt. Well, you know what? I think one thread's gonna be enough. Let's see if I break it. Doesn't take much. That's good. Yeah, I don't know what thread this bolt's supposed to be here. I only caught it by one. Alright, get this out of my face. Get this guy the rest of the way off. Should pull right on off. Here we go. So this is where we were. We want to be right about there. So while we're at it, I ain't been in here before. No idea if any of that works. That could be cleaned up some. That's where you get your contact for the horn. All right, a little spring. That's not terrible though. It's got a little bit of grime on it. These horns are junk though, these 70s trucks. Let's call that good, right? And throw this thing back on there. Yep, that's probably good enough. All the torque applied. Put this back on there. Yeah, it's no way it's gonna work. And throw these little guys back in there. He's got a big old lawnmower going. And where'd my little tiny 1/4 inch drive go? Cool. Now I actually feel like I've done something today. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Rotten Rust Garage. I hope you enjoyed it. I know a lot of talking, very little wrenching. Before I go, though, I do want to mention a few mistakes that I made in the walk around. Get a little confused. So much has been done to this truck. A lot of things I didn't even cover in the video. One mistake is I actually used the rear bumper to straighten the front of the bed, that front bed rail that was pretty tore up. I don't know why I said the front bumper. I did not do that. I used the back bumper. A couple of other things. One other thing I forgot was I said that the passenger side door was crammed into the fender. It was not. It was the driver's side door. The driver's side door didn't really have that much damage. I was able to repair that. Passenger side door, it was good without dents, but it had rot all along the bottom of it on the outside, so I just swapped it out. Yeah, it was easier than just trying to do all that metal work. I'd already done a ton of metal work to this truck. So anyway, so there's that. I forgot to mention that the tires, you probably saw the tires. I never talked about that. The tires were donors from my 2017 truck when I got different ones, because these are Mickey Thompson Mud Terrain Baja MTZ whatever, I don't know. They're like 34.5 inches tall. I didn't like them on my newer truck. They didn't tow well. They were good in the mud, but they didn't tow well. A little noisy and a little bit of pooling around 70 miles an hour. So I got those off of that truck, donated them to this truck, which required me to go out and buy 17-inch rims for this one, which was pretty easy. Went to Summit Racing, got the 8-lug, and I think they were 9 inches wide, and they were 17-inch rims, and just I don't know if you saw it in the video, but they're just wagon wheel black spoke rims, and they were maybe $120 a piece or something like that. So money well spent on those to get those tires and recycle them onto this truck. And so that pretty much does it for this. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and stick around. Come back next week. We're going to probably be messing with another one of my projects, get it on the road, and we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great week.